What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. Okay, let's do a little thing we call the Middlekauff mailbag. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire into those DMs at John Middlekauff. It's just my name. Fire in those DMs. I just saw DJ Moore got a large extension, 4 years, $110 million, over 80 guaranteed. He's really good. I mean, think about this with the Bears. They traded with the Panthers and ended up with DJ Moore and Caleb Williams. Just that alone. If you just said, hey, you're going to end up with Caleb Williams and DJ Moore. That's obviously they ended up getting more because they picked the tackle with the 9th pick 2 years ago in a weird way because they were still crappy. It led them to Rome, even though that wasn't the Panthers pick. So spirits are high. I texted a buddy in the league. I said, who would you take, Aiyuk or DJ? He thought it was a coin flip. Little different player. Aiyuk, more of a route runner. DJ, a little more physical after the catch. But if you look at DJ's stat sheet, he has been on a lot of shitty teams with a lot of bad quarterback play, and he has produced. I like DJ Moore a lot. I actually think he's kind of a hybrid of does some of the stuff Aiyuk does with some of the stuff Debo. He's a unique player. Easy deal. This is his 3rd contract. He got his rookie contract. He got a 2nd contract, and now this is his 3rd extension. DJ Moore is going to bank a lot of money in his career if he can stay healthy. So you have to wonder if the 49ers will just copy and paste this deal and offer it to Brandon Aiyuk. We'll start with Patrick at John Middlekauff, Instagram, fire in those DMs. Can you describe what happens when the team has a locker room cancer? Can you give specific examples from your time in the front office? Care to speculate on how the Aiyuk situation may spoil the locker room, as Aiyuk is shown to be extremely bitter and may want a stat pad in preparation for his contract year? How would that affect Debo and speculation? Well, they're not going to get to the contract year because for him to play on the Niners this year, he will have to have a new contract. I think there are certain, when I was with the Eagles, I don't think we had a couple situations. The one that jumps out to me was DeSean Jackson really wanted a new contract. I typically didn't always go out to practice, but for whatever reason, our special teams coach or something needed help. And I went out to a practice, and DeSean, it was getting kind of contentious, and he was mad. He wanted some money. And during practice hadn't even started, and they were doing some punts. And it was Macklin and DeSean Jackson back returning punts. And Macklin would go, jog up a little bit, hand the ball back. DeSean got the ball kicked to him, and then he punted the ball out of the practice area. It went over the fence onto the street. And Deuce Staley, who was out there, they started screaming at each other. If I remember correctly, I think DeSean got kicked out of practice, and I think got suspended for a game. I think those type things over money, it just gets difficult, right? And not everyone handles it the same way. I think there's a big difference in a locker room cancer of just having issues with money. That's something very relatable. I think that happens, obviously, if you play in the NFL. If you have a contract that you want more money, you're talking a lot of money. But it's no different the guy bitching and moaning in the cubicle that's making 90 that thinks he should make in 150, or the dude making 150 thinks he should make in 275. I mean, money's all relative. I think the bigger issues, which I don't remember as much, are when guys are really negative and they're good players. I saw today a headline that Matt Judon wasn't there today. Well, if you have this guy sulking around over money and bringing down others, and when they're your best player, you got to figure that out, and you got to figure that out fast. I don't think it's, Aiyuk's in the position where it's awkward, but I don't think it's far enough along. I also think you got to take everything with a grain of salt, what you see on social media, and no one talks the way they talk on social media to people in real life. It's not real life. So the way he operated a little bit, I would say it's not how he's going to operate in front of Kyle, John, Debo, Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, right? But I think the worst locker room cancers are when a guy is just, I don't know, going nuts, right? Like Antonio Brown or what happened with Chandler Jones and the Raiders. It's like those situations can be difficult when one of your best players starts just going off the reservation. And it gets because you kind of like, can we figure this out? When you have good players that want new contracts, some guys handle it better than others, but that's the NFL. That's pro sports. That's the world. That's the life. I think when you get guys that are under contract making money and just start acting crazy, Terrell Owens had some of those issues that those become so public, there's no going back. So I think most of them contract related. It just, yeah, it's tough. I don't really know what else to say. I've gotten a lot of this. I got a text, Commodore. Love the Commie interview. My Commodore interview, if you missed it, go back and check it out. If you're not a hockey person, highly recommend it. He's an all-time guest. Why do you think the sport, meaning hockey, isn't as popular in the U.S. like football, basketball, or baseball? It's a high-speed game with hitting and plenty of violence. Is it because people from certain regions of the country never ice skated or don't regularly and cannot relate as well to it? I feel like people will always say, I went to a hockey game and loved it, but they never become full-time fans. I think this one's pretty easy. I'll just use myself as an example. I played baseball as a kid, little league up until like early junior high. I played basketball as a kid up until like 8th grade, and I played football in high school. So when I watch, like I've played all the sports, and I think I speak for a lot of people in America that even if you don't play in high school, maybe you played in junior high or little league or some, hell, I like a lot of kids, I played soccer and when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. I actually played a little roller hockey, but I think most people throughout America never play hockey. And the reason more people, if you think about it, just based on numbers over the last 30 years, have played football in high school than any other sport. So it's just a numbers game. Even if you don't play in the game, like you're on the team, you're at practice, like you put on pads, you played football. Most people I know have played, if even not, in a like a high school situation, have played recreational basketball, pickup basketball, shot baskets with their friends. It's why I'm high on golf. I think more people now than ever are playing golf. And the more people that play your sport are just more likely to watch that sport. I really think it's that simple. So the reason hockey's so big in Canada, because a lot of people grow up playing. Even if you're terrible, can't skate a lick, you try to play hockey when you're 10 or 12 or 8, right? That's not the case here. You're much more inclined to try to play basketball, try to play football. And, back in the day, I knew a lot, like my dad, who as he got older, my dad never really liked playing golf. He was more into tennis. And back, in the 70s and 80s, tennis was really, really popular. And a lot of people tried to play. And now, the fat guy's tennis is pickleball, which I'd be lying. I tend to be a little anti-pickleball. I've never played, and everyone I know that plays loves it. I never meet people that say they play pickleball that don't rave about it. It's just one of those things. Everyone hangs a left. Sometimes I hang a right. I'm out on pickleball. Maybe one day I will try it. I'm just a hater. I mean, I'll acknowledge that. But the more and more people that play pickleball, like maybe pickleball on television one day will be big, because the more people that play your sport, the more people that watch. Not playing best ball at DraftKings? You're missing out. Here's what you need to know. DraftKings Best Ball Millionaire Contest is their biggest fantasy contest ever. We're talking 15 million guaranteed prize pool with two millionaires being crowned for the first and second place. If you're set it and forget it type, then Best Ball is for you. No waiver wires, no roster management, bigger roster so injuries won't end your season. Only the draft, and that's it. You're set for the year. 15 million prize pool. Still not convinced?
Check this out. This year, DraftKings is offering everyone a Draft One, Get One special. Your $20 entry fee scores you a bonus ticket. Get in on all the best ball action. Download the DraftKings app and use the code JOHN, that's code JOHN, for all customers who enter the NFL Best Ball 15 Millionaire contest to get a bonus ticket and get a shot at being crowned one of the 2 millionaires only on DraftKings. I know this comes up every year, but could this year's NFC North be one of the best divisions in NFL history? Before I keep going on your question, I think it's impossible to do those statements / questions because we do it a lot before season starts. I just think we can't do that. You have to let the season play out because we've done that so many times. Didn't we do it a couple years ago? Was it with the AFC West? And it turned out it wasn't nearly as good as we thought. Detroit is obviously good. If Love can be 80% of his last 8 games, how is Green Bay not in the playoffs? I feel like Minnesota has too many weapons and too well coached to suck, and the Bears are loaded with a ton of hype. Could we see the first time an entire division make the playoffs? I think it's impossible for an entire division to make the playoffs, even with the 7th team, just given in both conferences, because just look around, right? So how would the 4th team, I don't think 9 wins is getting in the NFC. Because if you just go, how many double-digit win teams are going to be? Let's just say the Lions, let's say the Niners, let's say the Eagles, and let's, pick the Falcons. Even though I'm not going to pick them, but it feels like a lot of people are picking them. Let's just pick the Falcons. So that's 4. Well, more than likely, right, the Rams are good. Tampa made the playoffs last year. Dallas has made the playoffs 3 straight years, and McCarthy's pretty credible coach. And then even some of the shitty teams in those divisions, right? You'd have to look at all the schedules, but like the Cardinals could beat you on a random week. The Commanders, who I think are a little overhyped, like I bet they're better. Obviously, they're going to be better next year than they are this year. But like, let's say they have an underwhelming year at 6 wins. A couple of those wins are going to come against like some playoff teams. The Saints are frisky. I mean, they won 9 games last year. So I think it's just very, very difficult to get to the spot where all 4 teams are that good. I think, was it 3 years ago, the Niners, the Rams, and the Cardinals all made the playoffs. So 3 is an incredible season for a division. I think 4, maybe I'm speaking out of turn. I think it's impossible. You would need terrible seasons from the other teams in the division. Terrible. Question for the mailbag. I'm a Hawks fan, and I can't help but hate where the team is. Geno isn't the answer, and he actually makes the situation worse. He's good enough to keep us from having a shot at a top quarterback in the draft, but isn't good enough for us to compete in the playoffs. With higher echelon quarterbacks like Herbert, Allen, obviously Mahomes never becoming available, let alone making it into free agency. How do you see us solving this issue? Do we cut trade Geno, or do we bottom out with Sam Howell? Well, bottoming out is not going to be an option. That's not what John Schneider and your new coach from Baltimore, that's just, they're not going to do that. The only way Howell plays is if Geno gets hurt. Now he's gotten hurt before. I mean, last year Drew Lock came in and you guys won games. This is going to sound crazy, but maybe you just got to get lucky again in the draft. Like, not every guy, you use. Josh Allen was the 7th pick, right? And Buffalo traded up to get him. Patrick Mahomes was the 10th pick or 12th pick. I get him and DeSean mixed up. One was 10, one was 12. But both those guys, the other teams traded up to select. So you can get a guy in the teens and trade up and select. Or you can strike oil past the first round, right? It happened with you guys with Russell Wilson. It happened with the Cowboys with Dak Prescott. It happened with the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. It happened with the 49ers and Brock Purdy. It doesn't have to be, CJ Stroud, 2nd overall pick, Caleb Williams, 1st overall pick. There are a lot of other guys having a lot of success that were not number 1 overall picks. The shitty part about that is you never know. Beside TPC Scottsdale, is there another course you'll play?
in the area. Yeah, I live at Greyhawk, so I bought this little summer pass. I played there a couple times. Cool course. Troon. Many people think that that's one of the better courses, public courses on the West Coast. It's tough. Weekapaw, which is a very, very popular 36 hole track. It's got a casino out there on an Indian reservation. I played it. I've only played it once. It's when I came here Memorial Day, probably 2020, but it was sweet. That's the only time in my life I've been drunk teeing off because we played 36 holes. Started drinking hole one. By the time we got to 18, had a little delay, went in more cocktails. I could barely stand for the last 9 holes. And I was playing good. I was like from hole 9 to 27, I think I was like 1 over. The stretch in the middle, and then by the whole like the last couple holes, I mean, I was falling over. But Weekapaw, great experience there. If you want to go a little cheaper but solid tracks like Whirlwind, Raven, good public tracks. Silverado, probably low, but it's right in Paradise Valley, close to downtown. I've played it. I didn't mind it. A lot of places it'd be like a $20 course here. Probably in the summer, it's probably like 60, 70. I don't think you can really have a bad experience around here playing golf. I'm a Nashville native and could be overly optimistic of a completely rebuilt Titans team. But I think on paper, we match up nicely with anyone. If Levis can be the 16th best quarterback in the league, I think we can be competitive. After listening to what Callahan, Holtz, and Denard Wilson have planned for our team, I can't help but think they will elevate the star power we have acquired. Indy and Houston are scary, but I'll take us over the Jags any day of the week. If you're ever back in Nashville, let me know. I can get you on a private 36-hole track, and I work 25 minutes north of Nissan. Might take you up. I'll be there in late August. Little food tasting. I'm excited. Fat guys. And who's going to turn down food tasting? Not me. One of the guys you listed, I know someone with the Titans pretty well. One of the coaches on the staff. And I haven't talked to him since training camp started, but he was pretty optimistic in the spring. I'm not trying to overhype Will Levis, but they were excited. Now, most people get excited during the spring when you get a guy with physical talents who's a good guy, working hard, and they were like going out to dinners with the quarterbacks. I mean, people were having a good spring's great. I mean, it's why I never understand skipping the spring to work out on your own. You literally just go work out what you're doing anyway, have paid for dinners by the organization, sending you to hockey and NBA games. Your coaches take you out to sweet dinners on the organization. It's a very, very chill time. But they do have some talent on the team. I think the question mark is going to be, you add Calvin Ridley, you sign Pollard. I saw a clip going viral of Jeffrey Simmons, who obviously is an awesome player, screaming at this radio host today that looked like the radio station that hosts the Titans games. One of the dudes on there had tweeted something and he's calling him a pussy and it's just screaming back and forth. It was very entertaining to watch. I'm not up to in on the loop of what's going on, what was said, but I love those interactions. A lot of people were commenting that Simmons is kind of crazy. I honestly know nothing about him besides he's a good player. Listen, every year there's a team. I had someone DM me, I think, about the Giants. If Daniel Jones plays like Alex Smith, the Giants can win 9-10 games. It's just a simple fact. Like the Alex Smith version that Andy Reid had. But he has to be better than he was 2 years ago. Because 2 years ago, it was made up for with Saquon Barkley. So they're going to, they can't compete to make the playoffs with him throwing 15 touchdowns. Even if their defensive line should be pretty good. Right? Your defensive line should be pretty good too. And offensively, you have some weapons. You draft an offensive lineman early. You get Callahan's dad, who's one of the best offensive line coaches. So it all hinges on, is Levis just solid? And does he have games where he throws 3 or 4 touchdowns and has some down games, whatever, but it's high end? Or is he just a bottom 5 quarterback? Because obviously, if he's a bottom 5 quarterback, your team's going to suck. he's one of the great unknowns in the NFL. You get an offensive coach, you get his dad's the O-line coach. Like there's a lot of emphasis in that organization on offense. Don't know how far your connections go, but big Saints fan, and wondering what your sources are saying about Spencer Rattler. What's funny is maybe I'll start doing it next week. I really haven't texted anyone I know in the NFL like how their team's looking. I actually did it for the first time because a buddy had reached out to me. So I haven't really been keeping tabs beside what I see on the internet just because it's so early. I did see a clip on Spencer Rattler today. Hayner, who they drafted last year, who I know, Fresno State guy, is suspended. So Spencer Rattler is going to be the backup quarterback to start the season. They clearly like him a lot. Yeah, I mean, I like Hayner too, but I think Spencer Rattler, when it's all said and done, especially if he has a good camp because Hayner suspended, is probably going to be the backup. Also curious about Derek Carr's contract and how long he is tied to us. If he underwhelms, Rattler shines, how punitive it would be for us to move on. If you guys don't make the playoffs this year, Dennis Allen will be fired and Derek Carr will no longer be the quarterback. So they're one of those teams where, like, we could speculate, like, is Brian Daboll really on the hot seat? I only say that because John Mara's recent history is like he'll fire guys. But would it shock me if they kind of underwhelm and he gets another year? Yeah, for sure. It's pretty clear. If the Saints do not make the playoffs this year, they don't have to win the division, but they got to be on the wild card. They got to be in the playoffs. Their coach and their quarterback are done. That's not an opinion. I mean, that's pretty clear. I mean, and you as a Saints fan kind of, I'm sure, know that as well. So I would say Derek Carr is a massive year for his career. Question for the pod. Steve Young got traded to the Niners in 1987 to replace an injured Joe Montana. Montana recovered and remained the starter in San Francisco until 1991. So Young ended up starting in 1987. How many Super Bowls does Young win? And where does he end up on the all-time list? For context, Montana won 2 Super Bowls from 87 to 91. I think it's fair to say he definitely has another one. Now, I read, aka listened to Steve Young's book. You know, after like year 3, they started asking Walsh, like, what is going on? Like, you need to let us go. Completely different times. Steve Young was a little bit of a project, though, when they got him. And part of the story, he thought Joe's back was shot. He would only be there for a year. And the first practice, they go out and Joe looks fantastic. Joe still got banged up a little bit, I think, over that time. But yeah, I don't know. That's Steve would like. When was Steve truly ready to kick ass? Because by the time they get rid of Joe, Steve's winning MVP immediately. And those teams, you know, in the late 80s with Charles Haley, with Ronnie Lott, obviously with Jerry Rice, Roger Craig, I think wins a couple. So he wins his in 94 and wins another one in the late 80s. But it's hard to just say for a fact that if Steve was a quarterback and Joe wasn't the quarterback, they win for sure. Because the Steve, especially if you're my age, Steve got better as he played more, but maybe that's because he didn't really he did get to play. If you go to it's one of the crazier stories in NFL history that for 4 years, their backup quarterback who they traded for was Steve Young, who's an NFL Hall of Famer. So he started because Joe did get banged up. So in 87, he started 3 games. That might have been the strike year. 88 started 3 games. 89 started 3 games. 1990 only started the 1. In 91, he started 10 games and went 5-5. 17 touchdowns, 8 picks. And then his first year starting, it was off to the races. 25-7. The Niners went 14-2. By 94, he won the MVP 35-10, and they won the Super Bowl. So I think it's fair to say with Walsh as the coach, but didn't Seifert, I think Seifert took over. They win in 88, and then he takes over in 89. Because people act like Walsh has 3 Super Bowls. Seifert had 2. Seifert won a Super Bowl with Montana and then won another one with Steve Young. It's good. That's a good question. And I say this all the time about legit sports arguments. You can read a book or you can watch YouTubes. If you don't live something, it's hard to know. Like I can give you completely borderline uneducated guesses because I didn't experience it. If you ask some 50-year-old who lived through it and was a diehard fan, they would have a hard take. I don't have a hard take. It's like, who was better, Jack Nicklaus or Arnold Palmer in their prime? I don't know. Joe Namath or Terry Bradshaw? No clue. We can look at stats all we want, but it's like, who was better? Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre? Like, I feel pretty good arguing that one. Who was better, Steph Curry or Kobe Bryant? Like, whenever you watch people yourself, it's just so much easier to like feel very, very good about the take. Like, I can't have strong arguments about 1980s NFL. I've met enough people that have talked about like the Dan Marino ball was different than any, how awesome Elway was as an athlete, how just under control Montana was. But it's like watching the YouTube videos is not the same. If you want to talk about Josh Allen and Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers and Roethlisberger and Cam Newton and Eli Manning, like I could do it till I'm blue in the face and give you, if there was scenarios like that, give you them perfectly. But it's hard. I guess I would guess he would win another one because the team's so good, but it's hard to know. I know this till my dad's dying days. Those Montana truthers, they like Steve as a guy and a personality, and obviously he was a good player, but they never forgave getting rid of Joe. It's hard. It's no different. It's different with the Patriots because they didn't have anyone to replace him with. But when you replace a Joe Montana and you do it for a guy, if they would have, the Jimmy Garoppolo for Tom Brady had actually worked out, it's very, very difficult because you've just been through so much with the one guy and won so many championships and you've just seen his greatness. It's just, you never truly embrace that other person. You really don't. They almost feel like, I don't know, the stripper girlfriend. It's just never quite the same. The love that you had with your wife and the mother of your children.